It started as the kind of day that families cherish. Warm Saturday afternoon in late spring. The sun casting a gentle golden hue over the neighborhood. The moment had been eagerly anticipated among the Johnson family, who had planned this picnic for weeks. They had packed a picnic basket with homemade sandwiches, fresh fruit, and their mother's famous lemonade. Children's laughter echoed as they set up blankets under the sprawling oak tree in the community park, a peaceful spot within their tightly knit neighborhood. For the Johnsons, it was more than just a picnic. It was a rare chance to connect, to foster a sense of unity among themselves and their neighbors. Robert and Lisa Johnson had worked tirelessly to instill strong family bonds, understanding that these moments were the glue of their family life. Their kids, Emily and Jake, were excited, running around, chasing butterflies, and playing tag while parents, relaxed and soaked in the gratitude of a moment free from screens and deadlines. But beneath the tranquility lay a threat to that peace, a neighbor. Mrs. Harper, a woman known for her rigid adherence to HOA rules, ever watchful and quick to judge, Mrs. Harper had been known for her sharp tongue and her attitude that anything outside the exact standards of the neighborhood was an offense. Rumors whispered through the community about her propensity to call authorities over minor infractions. To the Johnsons, she was just another neighbor, respectable but stern, often giving icy glances but never engaging much. Today, however, she seemed particularly agitated. As the family enjoyed their sunny afternoon, Mrs. Harper appeared at the edge of the park, her face pinched with evident displeasure, her eyes fixed on the gathering, and her presence felt like a dark cloud creeping into an otherwise perfect day. When she approached, her sharp voice cut through the air. "You're blocking part of the sidewalk," she snapped, pointing accusingly at the picnic setup. "That isn't allowed. This is a community area, not your backyard." Robert looked up, surprised but eager to diffuse the tension. "Oh, I'm sorry. We didn't mean to block the sidewalk. We'll move over a little." Mrs. Harper's eyes narrowed. "You think that's enough? I've seen enough violations around here. If you don't obey the HOA rules, I'll have to call the authorities." The family's mood shifted instantly from joy to discomfort. Lisa tried to apologize, hoping to de-escalate. Still, Mrs. Harper's stance was rigid, her voice sounding more like a declaration than a request. She whipped out her phone, threatening to call the cops if they didn't comply immediately. The Johnsons, innocent and confused, tried to reason, but the damage was done. The situation seemed to escalate in a blink. Soon, sirens wailed in the distance as the police arrived, a stark contrast to the peaceful tableau of a family day out. What happened next, however, was entirely unexpected. The officers, mature and calm, approached, and after listening to the complaints about the picnic, they began questioning Mrs. Harper about her behavior. Tensions flared when she refused to back down, and her attitude grew more aggressive. Something shifted in that moment, something none of them could have predicted. The police officers approached the scene with a professional demeanor, aiming to mediate the conflict. But what unfolded next was a series of unforeseen events that turned the day into an emotional upheaval. Mrs. Harper's accusations about the family blocking the sidewalk were minor in nature, but her tone and attitude revealed deeper frustrations that had been bubbling beneath the surface for a long time. As the officers began speaking with Robert and Lisa, Mrs. Harper continued to shout, drawing attention not just from the police, but from neighboring residents who had gathered, drawn by the commotion. Emotions ran high. Yet, despite the tension, the family remained calm, hoping to resolve the misunderstanding peacefully. But Mrs. Harper's demeanor was unrelenting. The officer in charge, Officer Martinez, tried to defuse the situation. "Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but calling the police over a minor sidewalk issue isn't necessary. Let's try to resolve this calmly," he said, voice steady and reassuring. Mrs. Harper, however, refused to back down. She pointed finger guns at the family's picnic, almost as if accusing them of a grave crime. "They're disrespecting our rules, disrespecting our neighborhood. I won't stand for it," she yelled. Things took a drastic turn when Mrs. Harper, in a sudden burst of hostility, began to berate the officers, claiming they were ignoring her complaints and dismissing her rights as a community member. She spun tales of previous grievances, painting the Johnsons and others as rule breakers. Her voice grew louder, more aggressive as she seemed to lose control over her wrath. The officers, trying to keep control of the situation, politely asked her to calm down and to explain her grievances without raising her voice. But she refused, stepping closer to the officers in an intimidating manner that crossed the line between complaint and confrontation. Suddenly, without warning, Mrs. Harper reached into her purse, pulled out a small object, and threw it at the officers, an act that shocked everyone present. It turned out to be her phone, but the gesture was aggressive, and the officers interpreted it as a threat. The mood changed instantly from tense to dangerous. In a split second, the officers moved to detain Mrs. Harper, restraining her and calling for backup as a precaution. Tears streamed down her face as she shouted expletives, claiming she was being unfairly targeted. The family watched in stunned silence, their emotions caught between fear, confusion, and a trembling sense of injustice. The officers gently placed her in handcuffs, reading her rights. It was a heartbreaking moment. She had called the police out of frustration, only to find herself restrained and arrested. The family felt a tumult of guilt, helplessness, and shame. They had come to enjoy a simple family outing, and now they were witnesses to an emotional tragedy unfolding before their eyes. As Mrs. Harper was taken away, the neighborhood fell silent. The once vibrant picnic spot felt empty and heavy, overshadowed by the weight of what had transpired. The children clung to their parents, sensing the gravity of the situation. The police regrouped, apologized for the distress caused, and made it clear that they had only acted to prevent an escalation of violence. What the family experienced that day, the unexpected turn, the chaos, the heartbreak, was something they would never forget. It marked the beginning of a new chapter about community, justice, and standing up for oneself in a landscape where authority was invoked in moments of crisis. The arrest of Mrs. Harper left the neighborhood reeling. Rumors spread rapidly like wildfire, each telling their own version of the day's events. Some neighbors sympathized with Mrs. Harper, viewing her as a victim of neighborhood neglect or disrespect. Others, like the Johnsons, felt overwhelmed by the harrowing experience that had turned an ordinary day into an emotional battlefield. The Johnson family returned home, their hearts heavy with confusion and sadness. The children struggled to understand what had just happened, asking timidly if their grandmother was going to jail or if they had done something wrong. Lisa held Emily and Jake tightly, tears in her eyes, trying to reassure them that their day had been disrupted, but their family was still safe. Robert, meanwhile, reflected on the scene with a mixture of anger and sorrow. How had things spiraled so far out of control? What did this say about their neighborhood, about community standards, and about the fragile nature of civility in a world increasingly divided by suspicion and fear? He wondered if anything could be done to heal the wounds wrought by this event. In the days that followed, the family grappled with feelings of vulnerability and helplessness. They attended community meetings, trying to advocate for understanding and forgiveness, but many residents remained divided. The incident had exposed underlying tensions, fear, frustration, loneliness that simmered beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect neighborhood. What haunted Robert and Lisa the most was the realization that Mrs. Harper's actions, driven by her own pain and perhaps deep-seated issues, had resulted in a moment of law enforcement intervention that none of them had anticipated. She'd called the police out of a sense of righteous indignation, but it had ended with her own arrest. Was she a victim of her own hostility, or was her demeanor simply a reflection of a deeper struggle? The family sought counseling to process their feelings. Recognizing that healing would take time, they remained committed to fostering community, to understanding that behind every encounter lies a person, flawed, vulnerable, seeking respect. They believed in forgiveness, in the power of compassion, but also in standing firm for justice when it was truly needed. This incident became a catalyst for change, not just for the neighborhood, but for themselves. The Johnsons realized that peace required effort, patience, and above all, empathy. What had once seemed like an ordinary day had become a profound lesson on human dignity, community resilience, and the unpredictable power of emotions. The legal proceedings that followed were a blur for the Johnson family. Mrs. Harper faced charges involving her behavior at the scene, assaulting police officers, disturbing the peace, and resisting arrest. The courtroom was filled with tension, but for the Johnsons, the most profound moment was witnessing the woman who had caused so much distress, now confronted by the consequences of her actions. Mrs. Harper's defense centered on her feelings of justice, her sense that her concerns were dismissed, and her own mental health struggles. Her lawyer argued that she had been provoked, that her action was born out of frustration rather than malice. The families in the courtroom listened intently, recognizing that everyone's story was complex yet interconnected. The judge, after listening carefully to the testimonies, issued a sentence that balanced accountability with compassion. Mrs. Harper was sentenced to community service and mandated counseling, acknowledging her mental health needs, while also emphasizing the importance of respecting law and order. The process, though difficult, marked a turning point. Mrs. Harper's arrest was a stark reminder of how unresolved pain and anger could escalate into crises. The Johnsons felt a cautious sense of justice served, but also grappled with feelings of empathy. They understood that punishment alone wouldn't heal the wounds. Building bridges required understanding and community support. In the aftermath, the neighborhood began to address deeper issues, her roles of inclusion, mental health outreach, and redefining the boundaries of respectful coexistence. The incident ignited conversations about mental health, neighborhood policies, and the importance of kindness. For the Johnson family, the experience was transformative. They knew their picnic day had been forever altered, yet it also served as a catalyst for growth. They learned to listen more deeply, to extend forgiveness where possible, and to stand firm for what was right. The scars of that day would not fade entirely, but they would remind everyone involved of the importance of compassion, humility, and community resilience. Months after that tragic day, life in the neighborhood gradually returned to a semblance of normalcy. The Johnsons organized a neighborhood cleanup, encouraging community dialogue and unity. They wanted to turn the painful memories into a catalyst for positive change. Their family, once shaken by the chaos, found strength in their willingness to forgive and rebuild. The children, Emily and Jake, grew more compassionate, understanding that even adults could make mistakes driven by pain or fear. Their mother, Lisa, started a neighborhood support group focused on mental health awareness, trying to ensure that others like Mrs. Harper could find help before situations spiraled out of control. Robert often thought about that sunny day turned sour, the moment when civility snapped, and when, unexpectedly, kindness and justice prevailed instead of chaos and punishment. It was a reminder that human beings are complex creatures, capable of both harm and healing. The community had learned a hard lesson about boundaries, respect, and the importance of compassion. In time, the memory of Mrs. Harper's arrest faded into a chapter of their neighborhood history, a story told not just with anger or shame, but with lessons learned. What had begun as a simple family picnic had become an emotional testament to resilience, a story of tragedy, justice, and ultimately hope. The Johnsons looked forward, holding on to the belief that their community could heal, stronger and more united, because they had faced adversity head-on with empathy and courage. The day that everything changed was etched into their hearts forever, a reminder that justice without compassion is incomplete, and that rebuilding trust begins with understanding.